Hi guys, it's Graham again and welcome back to my channel. So today I am here with an autumn Halloween bookish recommendations video. Now these are books that I have read and that I love and that make me feel all autumnal and dark and spooky. So yeah, let's get into the books. So the first book that I chose, you can't have a Halloween recommendations video or list without this book because it is the quintessential Halloween horror story. Even though it was first published in May, I believe, in 1897. Maybe that gives you a clue as to what it's going to be. So it's Dracula by Bram Stoker. This is written in the form of diary entries, letters, newspaper reports, and it is glorious. It's dark, it's gothic, it's terrifying, it's just brilliant. And I think what makes Dracula such a scary story is the fact that Dracula's not in it for very much, but he's always there. So he is like a spectre that's hanging over these people, and they are all terrified of him. They're all terrified of what's going to happen next, and he's just not there, but he always is. And I love that. That's so dark. I have never read this edition. I have read it in an edition from the 1920s, which I absolutely adore. This is the Vintage Classics Red Spine edition. And yeah, whenever I see a really nice edition of Dracula in the shops, I will pick it up because it is a book that I enjoy. So yeah, that's number one on my list. So the second book that I am going to recommend for autumn, Halloween, October time is a book that I read, I believe it was at the beginning of this year. It may have been the tail end of last. I can't remember, but I have certainly read this book. Again, not in this edition. This edition I've chosen because it's a very old edition and it kind of feeds into that whole creepy old Halloween kind of aesthetic, and I like it. So it's Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. This is the cheap edition, so this was 4 and 6 back in the 1940s. I think this was like during the war. So it's by London Victor Gollancz. Where is the date? Does it have one? So this edition is from 1949. So it's post-war. The country was still in rationing. So paper was at premium. There were still things that the country didn't have. And yet they still produced this really rather beautiful edition, which I am so happy to have in my collection. This tells the story of a woman, the girl. She is never named, as far as I remember. She meets Max de Winter while on holiday, and a whirlwind romance happens. They marry. She's taken back to Manderley, his country home in Cornwall. It's England somewhere. I'm fairly certain it's Cornwall because most of Daphne du Maurier's books are set in Cornwall. Spooky things start to happen. The housekeeper, I'm gonna be shot for not remembering her name, Mrs. Danvers, is just the wickedest of wicked old witches. Max de Winter's first wife, Rebecca, who is never, she's never in the book because she's dead. She is forever a haunting presence in the life of the newlywed Mrs. de Winter, and the girl gets obsessed. And it turns out that, Rebecca's body is in a yacht out in the bay. Her husband, Max de Winter, is implicated as being involved in her murder. And it just has that gothic, dark, spooky, ghostly feel about it, and I think it's the perfect read for autumn Halloween. Now, the next one, I have read most of these that are in this collection, but the main one I haven't read, and I need to get to it. I have, this is a bind up of a few of this author's books, and I always say that every October I'm going to read this certain book, and I never do. I've heard so many good things about it, and it's almost like I decide not to because I want to save it up, if that makes sense. It's The Woman in Black and Other Ghost Stories by Susan Hill. This edition, though, isn't it just beautiful? So yeah, these are little gothic tales, mostly like small short novellas, which are genuinely terrifying. I have seen the film with Daniel Radcliffe of The Woman in Black. I haven't seen the sequel because I've heard it's not very good. But yeah, absolutely terrifying and so well written in the sort of Victorian horror tradition. So it's a must read, absolutely. My next choice is another sort of kind of gothic tale, and this one has stuck with me ever since I read it a couple of years ago, and I may read this again at some point soon. It is The Victorian Chaise-Longue by Marghanita Laski. This tells the story of a young woman who has just got married. She is also recovering from a disease, I think it's tuberculosis. She and her husband have been antique hunting, so filling their home with antiques. And there is this one piece of furniture that is a chaise-longue, and it is from the Victorian times. The young girl is walking through her house. She sits down on the chaise-longue, falls asleep, and when she wakens up, she's still on the chaise-longue, but she's in someone else's body in another time. And she knows that she's there, but the person that's in the room with her believes that she is the person who she now inhabits the body of, if that makes sense. And she is trying to convince this woman that she shouldn't be there. She's out of her time. She needs to go home. But it so turns out that the person who owned the chaise-longue before had consumption, which I think is the old name for tuberculosis, and she died in the chaise-longue. How terrifying is that? I think she eventually does waken up. I'm sure she does. Like I say, it's a couple of years ago since I read this. It's another one that I think I need to reread. And also, the end papers are really quite cheery. And yeah, it doesn't really tell you that you're in for a spooky roller coaster ride of ghostly Victorian consumptive furniture based scariness. But yeah, it's a really good one to get to. The next one that I am choosing for my recommendations for Halloween October Spooky Fest is Stardust by Neil Gaiman. This is brilliant. I absolutely adore this. It tells the story of Tristram Thorne, who, for the love of a young girl who unfortunately doesn't feel love for him, he pledges his love by saying that he will go over the wall into another realm, basically, and he will retrieve a fallen star. He then does this and meets up with a whole host of magical creatures and witches, ghouls, and it's just incredible. He ends up not marrying Victoria, who is the young girl who doesn't reciprocate his feelings. He marries the fallen star, and they rule over the land of... what is the land called again? I cannot remember. I am such a bad person. If I remember, I will pop it on the screen. But they rule over that land, and yeah, the film is also beautiful, and I love it. And I need to reread and rewatch the film. So, the next one that I'm going to choose for my list is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. This is glorious. I love this. The whole aesthetic of the fairground and dark magic and curses and secrets, it just feeds into that whole Halloween vibe for me, and I adore this. This tells the story of a man and a woman who, from a very young age, have been trained to basically do battle with one another in a sort of magical way, and they end up falling in love with one another, and it's just incredible. The Night Circus appears as if out of nowhere, and it's a very popular place. It's very surreal. It's very dark, magical, ethereal, and it's just a beautifully written piece of, I'm going to say Gothic fiction, because it does have that kind of Gothic feel about it, and I love it. I absolutely adore this. It's great. But I only read it for the first time last year, and this has been around since 2011. I don't know why. I feel like I've missed out because I haven't read it sooner. It's just glorious. I love it. So my next choice, we're down to my second last choice now. I couldn't have a Halloween spooky recommendations list without including this. This came out in 2018, and I had it on, I think I had it on pre-order from the moment I knew that it was becoming available, because I just had to have it in my life. It is Hocus Pocus and the all-new sequel. And this is by, it doesn't have the author's name, and I cannot remember who wrote it. It's a Disney book, and it's by A.W. Jantha, and it's based on the screenplay by Mark Garris and Neil Cuthbert. Story by David Kirshner and Mark Garris. So everyone knows the story of the Sanderson sisters of Hocus Pocus, that I'm wearing them on my t-shirt, in a sort of trendy kind of modelly fashion that they're standing. There's two books in this. The first one is like a novelisation of the 1993 movie that starred Bette Midler, Sarah Jessica Parker, and Kathy Najimy. The all-new sequel takes place 25 years later. Max and Alison have had a daughter. What is her name? Poppy. Her name is Poppy, and I love the sequel because the witches come back, and there's elements of LGBTQ plus characters. There's black character representation, and it's just brilliant. It's absolutely amazing. But you get a few more characters that were kind of touched upon in the first film, in the first book, and it's just amazing. It's just great, and I love this edition. It's just so fabulous. I am always living in hope that there will be a second movie, but as time wears on, it's unlikely, I think, unless they decide to make the all-new sequel into a movie, which I'd totally be there for. But yeah, Hocus Pocus and the all-new sequel. You have to read this. It's so funny. So good. Now, my last recommendation is a massive book. It's huge. It's very heavy. It's bigger than my head, and that's big. I haven't read all of these. I've read all the novels. There are 4 novels by this gentleman in this series, and then the rest are short stories. It is The Complete Sherlock Holmes by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. This is the Barnes & Noble leather-bound edition, and I am just so in love with it. It's gold leaf edges on 3 sides. It has one of these scary ribbons that give me anxiety for some reason, and then it's embossed with gold and brown colours and Sherlock Holmes smoking his calabash pipe. And then on the back, it is just amazing. And in the centre, 221B for Baker Street. These stories have such a dark Gothic feel. And because they're set in London in the Victorian times, they just have that kind of foggy, smoggy city feel, you know, at the time of the Jack the Ripper murders and all that kind of thing, and the the gas lamp lights lighting the streets, and it's all foggy, and there's horses' hooves clattering away, and just, yeah, the general kind of Victorian Gothic London is encapsulated in these, and they're full of grisly murders, the powers of deduction, and it's just amazing. I, again, haven't read all the stories. I feel that every time I want to read them, I think, no, I'll save them. I'll save them up. And I think that's silly. That's really silly. But yeah, this edition is just amazing. And my husband bought me this edition, and I had loads of other editions of Sherlock Holmes, and as soon as I got this one, the Barnes and Noble, I mean, look, it's just gorgeous. I'm getting rid of my other editions, and those are on my Depop. So I will try and link that down below if you want to have a little piece of Sherlock Holmes in your life. That is the end of my recommendations for spooky month, Halloween, October, autumnal time. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you don't feel that I've just blathered on and talked at you into your ears and down your eyeballs. But yeah, it's just a list of some sort of spooky books that I enjoy and that I feel give the sort of Halloween spooky ghostly vibe. But anyway, I shall go. Thank you so much for watching. Whatever you're doing, I hope you have so much fun doing it. Whatever you're reading, I hope you love it. Stay fabulous, be amazing, be yourself, stay safe, and I'll see you again soon for another video. Bye bye.